On today's show, Dyson Daniels and the Hawks have agreed to a $100 million contract extension in advance of Monday's deadline. We get into what it means for Dyson, what it means for the Hawks, the future, and more. It's coming up right now.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 2081 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Monday evening here in advance of the 2025-26 NBA season. And I want to encourage you at the top of the podcast, as I always do, to make Locked On Hawks your first listen each and every day. Check us out and subscribe to the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. We're on Apple, we're on Spotify, we're on YouTube as well. So please like this video as you're watching it and comment, leave a rating and review, tell your friends about the podcast as well. And we definitely appreciate you being here both today and always. And today will be almost a one-topic episode. The Hawks and Dyson Daniels have agreed to an extension, which certainly is the big news of Monday. And to kind of go back a little bit and give you the full context, for about 6 months now, the Dyson extension negotiations have been one of the bigger and more interesting topics around the Hawks since basically the end of last season. It's easy to forget now, I would say, that he's only been a Hawk for like 15, 16 months at this point, dating back to his arrival in Atlanta as part of the DeJounte Murray trade last summer. But immediately he became a fan favorite and certainly a favorite of basketball sickos across the board. I think that I was probably one of the people that was the highest on Dyson, even when he was kind of coming back to Atlanta in that trade. Even I did not expect him, though, to be as good as he was last season, winning most improved player of the entire NBA, finishing second in Defensive Player of the Year voting, putting up steals numbers that haven't been done since Alvin Robertson in 1990. Crazy numbers there. He averaged 14 points, about 6 rebounds per game, 4.5 assists in his age 21 season. And as the Hawks tweeted out, actually shared in their press release today, all kinds of crazy numbers, but the total steals records, the steals per game marks, all that stuff, deflections, the most deflections ever created or ever recorded, I should say, across the board in the NBA. The list goes on and on. At the same time, I will also say his profile as a defense-first player occasionally, or I would say more than occasionally, gets squeezed a bit in contracts sometimes. Offense, generally speaking, gets paid more than defense for perimeter players in the NBA. And even a few days ago, I was hearing that there was a pretty big gap between what the Hawks were offering and what Dyson's camp, agency, etc., was asking for in the discussions. For example, my good friend Mike Scott of Hoops Hype reported Monday morning, like earlier today, that the Hawks offer to that point was somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 years and $115 million, about $23 million a year, whereas Dyson had been reportedly asking for, at least through his agent, 5 years and $150, which is pretty similar to what I've been hearing throughout this process. I've mentioned the Jalen Suggs contract as a comparison point several times over the last few months on the show. It's been more in vogue recently, but I'm talking about this like basically all summer long, and that being a comp that Dyson's side should at least try to use in negotiations. But it was clear to me behind the scenes that the Hawks did not want to go all the way to that number on their side, so it's kind of hard to blame them for that as well. But at any rate, that's the full kind of backstory. But they settled on a 4-year deal worth $100 million that was announced on Monday afternoon. They agreed to it about 3 hours before the deadline on Monday, and then it was announced right before the deadline by the Hawks. Ansi Saleh, in his press release, by the way, as of right now on Monday evening, there have been no press conferences, no interviews, just one press release quote from Ansi, and it's the following, quote, "We are beyond thrilled to reach a long-term deal with Dyson, and we are excited to watch him continue to grow with our group. This extension reflects our belief in him today and into the future," end quote. So a lot that we don't know still, as we'll talk about much later on in this podcast. The structure of this deal is not entirely known. The exact numbers are not known at this point in time. It's been reported, and I was told the same thing behind the scenes, 4 years, $100 million. The Hawks do not announce their own numbers, and until the numbers actually hit the NBA database, they're not publicly known at this point in time. And I will definitely give you some more detailed analysis throughout this episode, but I want to start by saying, kind of broadly speaking, what I think about the deal. And that's why I think it's a good value for the Hawks. And at the same time, it makes total sense for Dyson. And that sweet spot is usually where a deal comes together, and that actually happened. So my general philosophy, and forgive me for repeating myself a little bit over the last few months, is that on the team side, which I know most people are fans of the team, and they're kind of looking at this from the team side of things, my philosophy from the team side is that you have to get a good value on a rookie scale extension if you're on the team side, or it doesn't make sense to do it. And what I mean by that is, keep in mind, you are doing this a year in advance if you are the team side. A year from now is when this deal begins. This does not begin right away. This extension begins next season. The 26-27 season is the first year that this is actually applying for Dyson Daniels. So once you do that a year in advance, you are transferring the risk from the player side to the team side. And for the team to justify doing that, they have to believe that they're getting a really good deal that makes enough value to them to kind of offset the risk that they're taking on in that vein. You don't have to go very far to look at an example of this. So last year, Jalen Johnson's deal was a perfect example of this. I absolutely loved that deal for the Hawks, and said as much on this podcast a year ago, because I thought at that point in time that if Jalen had a really good year and the year that I was kind of projecting him to have, it was going to look like an absolute bargaining contract at that point in time. And honestly, that happened. I know Jalen got banged up, but I think if he had hit the market a year later, last year as a free agent, he would have gotten more than his extension actually paid him. That's what you want if you are the team side. I was giving the Jalen deal like an A+ grade last year, basically, at least an A grade. This one's a little bit less than that for me, but still another really good value deal from the Hawks standpoint. Dyson will be making about 13 to 15% of the salary cap moving forward for his age 23 through age 26 seasons. That is his early to mid-prime, I would say. Another way to look at this a little bit more conventionally is that $25 million a year on average is basically just average starting caliber money. Not superstar money, not even star money. Average starter money moving forward. It is crazy, and the numbers have gone through the roof across the board in sports, but like that was almost the max, like not that long ago when I was covering the league. $25 million a year was a elite player kind of number. But now it's like your fifth best player, fourth best player should be making that kind of money, and that's where Dyson, all he has to do is kind of live in that range. It's a good deal for the Hawks. That's pretty natural. If he plays to where he was last season or even a little bit less than that, you feel absolutely great about this contract, much less if he improves offensively, which, by the way, he can still do. Something I'm big on saying over and over again is that Dyson Daniels is extremely young. He just turned 22 in March. He's not a finished product by any means, and that's a good thing for the Hawks. On the player side, I do think Dyson's taking a little bit of a discount here if you want to live in the fantasy world, the NBA, and only look at the percentage of the cap and what he is quote-unquote worth in the NBA only, again, fantasy land terms. If you ask what the fair value for Dyson would be, it'd probably be closer to what Keegan Murray got, which is like that 5-year, $140 million range or so. But I also know that I value defense more than most people do, and I like Dyson quite a bit. And that also removes any notion of real life risk from the table. Something I'll talk about later on even more is that this is 100 million American dollars in real money. And yes, this deal looks pretty team friendly to me. But Dyson's rookie contract was 4 years and a total of $25 million over 4 years pre-tax. Now you're locking in $100 million more than that. So you've quintupled your basically your net worth as a person overnight. And look, I know he was already rich. I get that. It's real life money. I get that so much. I do understand that. This is still life-changing money, even if you are a rich professional athlete. $100 million for Dyson Daniels is life-changing money. It is. And importantly, as we'll discuss later on, he gets back on the market in free agency if he has a good couple of years here at the age of 27. In fact, he'll have just turned 27 and he'll be a free agent in the middle of that summer, which means if he's still this kind of player or better, he'll be back on the market making a lot more money at that point in time. So that's the broad strokes of things, but I would say this is the ultimate kind of win-win situation. And that's honestly the most pleasant kind of deals to analyze from someone who's trying to be a neutral party covering the team, but also trying to be a human being. Like, these are all people, and that tends to be forgotten by fans sometimes, and I get why. But I talk to Dyson as a person. It is what it is. And I think that, again, win-win. I think Dyson gets the security. It's a shorter deal for him, which definitely is a positive if you are planning on getting better and better, but also you lock in generational money. On the Hawks side, you're getting a deal that if he's just the guy he's been already, is a really, really good deal for you. And usually win-wins are fun to cover, and this is, I think, one of those situations. So that's the overall. I will dig into some of the comps in a second, what it means for both sides more deeply at this point in time, future financing for the Hawks, what it might have impact for the future, and plenty more beyond that. And it's coming up in just one moment. No one likes paying rent. me included. If you actually have to pay rent, you might as well get something for it in your own life, and that is where Built comes in. Built is changing the game by turning your rent payment into real rewards that you can actually use for yourself. When you pay rent through Built, you can earn flexible points that can be redeemed towards hundreds of different hotels and airlines, future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and much more. But Built's not just about rent. It's about rewarding you around your entire neighborhood. With Built, your rent actually finally works for you. You're earning points every month on something you actually have to pay anyway, whether you're grabbing food at a local restaurant that you love or simply heading to the gym. In your own life, you are still earning rewards with Built. From your neighborhood to your travel plans, Built has made everyday life feel more rewarding. Turn your rent into rewards and start earning points around your neighborhood by going to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba. That is JOINBILT, joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba. And when you get there, make sure to use that link so they actually know that we sent you. One more time, it's joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba. This is brought to you by Skims. When I found out that Skims actually makes underwear for men, I was definitely intrigued by that. I've heard a lot about their quality from friends and family, and I had to give it a try for myself. Let me tell you, it definitely lives up to the hype in a big way. Many people have issues with their underwear, whether it's questions with fit or with comfort, or just finding the right style that you actually want in your life. Skims changes all of that. Their men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed with a perfect balance of comfort and style in mind. And for example, the stretch 5-inch boxer briefs have absolutely rave reviews. They're perfect for an active lifestyle. They move with you. They never lose their shape, and they stay in place all day. Whether you're working out or just running errands, the most comfortable and reliable underwear available anywhere is Skims. Plus, they have a lightweight material that feels amazing in any situation possible. You can shop Skims Men's at skims.com/lockedonnba and also in Skims stores. When you get there, also let them know that we actually sent you to them. After you place an order, select podcast in a survey and select our show in the menu that drops down and follows below. One more time, the place to go is skims.com/lockedonnba. All right, so we'll dig in a little bit now as to how the two sides got here, because I got a lot of questions, as you might imagine, about why the deal was a 4-year deal, for example, why the annual value is what it was. We'll try to answer all of that in the next few minutes on this podcast. And obviously, just to say this out loud, what I'm going to say is not gospel. This is not Ansi on the record on the show. Dyson's not answering for himself. I'm doing a combination of my own reporting, using common sense around the league, also league dynamics, like informed, but certainly don't want to speak for Ansi or speak for Dyson because they can speak for themselves. Just want to say that out loud. Now, on the Hawks side, we'll start there first. Why do I believe this is a value for the Hawks? Well, I would say one thing is that Ansi really understands, in my opinion, the market dynamics very well. He's a very pragmatic person who also has emotional intelligence, like to understand the situation. He's a pretty, straight ahead guy. And that definitely helps in situations. He's not going to go full Daryl Morey and ignore all personal dynamics, but he also isn't going to just give out a contract that might be comfortable to give out when the team could actually do better on a deal. I think he negotiated this pretty hard in the front office. Dyson's side was using the Jalen Suggs comp, and that I've been kind of putting out there for a while, but it was pretty clear to me and others for a while now that the Hawks were not going to give them that contract. And that is smart, I think, from Ansi's standpoint. Even if I think Dyson's probably worth that deal, quote unquote, that's not where the negotiation was headed. So I think it makes sense for the team to not want to give that deal out, generally speaking. Again, this is a year in advance, and the team has the power of restricted free agency. It's different with Trae Young or Porzingis, where they could just leave for free in this coming summer. That's a different dynamic. If you are a rookie scale extension candidate, you can't leave for free. The Hawks have matching rights on you next summer, and that gives the team a lot more power. It's more of a hammer in the situation. And again, also, the knowledge of decades of history that offense is paid more than defense, generally speaking in the NBA, particularly when it comes to perimeter players. The Hawks were at least willing to use the hammer of free agency next summer to their advantage. We'll never know how much they would have dug in on this, and that's okay. But I think they were kind of betting and telling Dyson's side that they were comfortable taking it there if they needed to and not being too worried about getting an absolutely crazy offer over the top. There's always some risk, but when you can match salary, you're kind of betting against the market in some respects, and they weren't too worried about that, I don't think. Dyson, for instance, could be a kind of a tricky fit some places with his shooting questions. There are some league-wide questions about Dyson. Not anything terrible, but about just his overall impact. He's a guard. Guards can't quite have the same impact defensively as bigs. Even if Dyson's the best in the league, that's goes without saying. I think that it still might be capped to some degree. And because of the New Orleans weirdness before he got to Atlanta, it's basically one full season of impact. And I think the Hawks would say that as well. So from what I heard, the Hawks were kind of drawing a relatively firm line in the sand. Like they were offering even less than this annually than they actually got to. There was a compromise that actually happened here, but they were never going to go to like 28 million a year, 30 million a year. And you could argue about whether that's smart or not, but above all, I think Ansi knows the situation, and the flexibility and his favorite word, optionality, matters to him and the organization. Part of that is the overall belief, like, you know, he just believes in that concept. Part of that is like there's a lot of unknown in the future. But for as much as I think it's a very, very clear positive that the Hawks have no bad money on the books at all moving forward, they do have the unknown with Trey. They have the unknown with Porzingis. They have the unknown on whether his owner, Tony Ressler, is willing to like ever green light spending above the tax line. That hasn't happened yet to this point in time. Like there's the unknown with this season. Like if they're good this year, it makes a lot more sense to kind of lock in this whole team and kind of keep it going. If they're not, then there's some uncertainty there. I think they're going to be good, but keep that in mind. So front office wise, they were operating within that. Like they definitely like Dyson. Ansi likes Dyson. They like Dyson as a player, and with good reason. But they also were not going to kind of risk signing a bad deal a year ahead of time. And I think they really value keeping that number down more than the 5th year in the end. So big picture, like they signed a deal that I think is good. And there was a reason behind them negotiating a little bit harder than you might have thought they might have at this point in time. Now, to Dyson's side of things, I'll start with that 5th year because I got a lot of questions about this. A lot of deals, like it didn't used to be possible. This is a relatively recent change where a rookie scale extension could be for 5 years at not the max. That was only a few years ago. But now a lot of guys are getting 5-year deals, and Dyson only got 4 years. And at first blush, you might think, oh, that's a loss for Dyson's side in the negotiation. I actually believe, from what I've heard, it's the other way. I think people were asking about it, and it makes sense. But for one thing, the cap is projected to be more than 190 million in the 4th year of this deal, and more than 200 million in what would have been the 5th year of this deal. That is a lot bigger than it is right now. And given how young Dyson is, still 22, just turned 22 in March, the opportunity to hit the market again in that environment with a $200 million salary cap, and then also still lock in $100 million in life-changing money now, was the sweet spot for Dyson. I think if all things were equal, I think if the Hawks offered, like, let's just say 5 for 125, that big round, same number, one more year, and Dyson also could have gotten 4 for 100 like he did, Dyson's side would have preferred 4 for 100, which might seem weird because it's less money guaranteed. I get that. But they're also betting on themselves a little bit here. They're taking the security, but that 5th year, if Dyson is still even the player he is right now with no improvement at all, if he's still the player he is right now, even maybe a little bit worse than he is right now, he will get that money in year 5. I'm confident in that, and probably even more than that. So it wasn't a massive concession, but I think that it's a concession that actually Dyson wanted. If I read things correctly and hear things correctly, they actually would have preferred the 1 year shorter to the 1 year longer, even if that might not seem normal. I think it's pretty smart risk mitigation for Dyson. I think people know by now, if you listen to the podcast regularly, that I absolutely I love Dyson. Even back in the draft, I loved Dyson. He was my guy in that draft. I liked him in New Orleans. I liked him in the trade. Last season, I was pretty high on him the entire way. I think he's awesome. The defense is already like just absurdly good, the way he can defend on the ball and also create havoc with his hands and deflections and steals. Offensively, I think he's underrated at this point in time. All that said, I love him. I still believe it was wise for him, and really most guys who were not superstar players, to, if the deal was reasonably fair whatsoever, to go ahead and lock in life-changing money with how big, the real life money is now. Like years ago, it was still millions of dollars, but this is like the real life numbers have gone crazy with where the league dynamics have gone, finances have gone. So in fact, locking in $100 million is life-changing money. That's just what it is. So for one thing, being a restricted free agent can be brutal. It occasionally works out well for you. And I think he would have got paid next summer. But what if he gets hurt? What if he has a shooting slump? What if he averages like 2 steals instead of 3 steals next year and the market gets a little bit lower? I think he's better than these guys. But look this year, like what happened to Kuminga and Quentin Grimes and Cam Thomas. Like there's some risk being a free agent in restricted free agency. He's better than those guys, but still, it can be fickle. So I would say being pragmatic and saying, look, if you're Dyson, you can lock in $100 million right now. When you do that, you never have to worry about money again in your life. And if you play well, you hit the market again at 27 and get maybe even a bigger deal next time. Like that makes very logical sense to me as a human and also as a basketball analyst. And I think he's even worth more than this. I do think that, honestly. I think if you just said, all right, who got the better deal in just raw NBA terms, I would say the team won this negotiation. But Dyson's still a $100 million guy now, and that matters in real life. As far as comps are concerned, like he got more than Shaedon Sharpe did this year, which is good. I think he's a better player than Shaedon Sharpe. He got more than Jabari Smith Jr. annually. That's also, I think, the right thing. He got less than Keegan Murray. Like, I think Keegan Murray is not as good as Dyson Daniels, to be honest with you. But that's not one that's like crazy that he got less. Murray has that more like prototypical 3-and-D package where Dyson's shooting is a little bit more of a question. Like, I think Dyson's better than Christian Brown. They got the same annual value. And as I said before, I think Dyson probably preferred his structure to Brown's structure. So close enough, same position, whatever. Anyway, I'll stop for now. But I really do believe that both sides did well here, and hopefully kind of like makes sense why the middle ground in this $25 million per year range is where they ended up, and that it was 4 years versus 5 years. That was a concession the Hawks made. That's totally fine. And we'll get to the kind of more impact on the team in a second. That's hopefully just the two sides of things. And now I look at the future finances in a moment when it comes to the books, how they might affect Trae Young, Porzingis, the future, and more in just one moment. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, and no BS. So you can say yes to making the switch and getting premium wireless for just $15 a month. Mint Mobile makes it simple. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can actually bring your own phone as well if you want to. Keep your same number and your same contacts. And at Mint Mobile, I love you actually getting the same quality service that you had before, but for a fraction of the price. The setup is also really, really easy, like really easy. You keep the same phone number and then you're up and running in just minutes. Are you ready to say yes to saying no? Make the switch now at mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. That's mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. Upfront payment of $45 required, equivalent to $15 per month. Limited time new customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow, about 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. All right, so we've broken down the angles of this from the team side, from Dyson's side, from the big picture NBA side. Now the monetary, financial, contractual, salary cap side of things. Before the Dyson deal, the Hawks only had 5 players on guaranteed contracts for next season, the 26-27 season. Jalen Johnson, Onyeka Okongwu, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Zachary Richer, and Asa Newell. Those 5 guys combined for next year, to make about $77.7 million. If you also throw in Mo Gay and Beat Krejci on their cheap non-guaranteed contracts, it gets to about $82.8 million for 7 players. That includes nothing for Dyson yet. Keep that in mind. Nothing for Trae. Nothing for Porzingis. Nothing for Luke Kennard. It removes the non-guarantees for guys like Juricic and Folly Dante, et cetera, et cetera. Now, importantly, this is not a one-season commitment. Like you're giving Dyson money for the long haul here. You got to manage the cap and the tax well beyond the coming season, but the cap does project to rise annually. There's some wiggle room in the future projections, all that fun stuff. So 7 players for about $83 million. The tax line is projected to be about $201 million for the 26-27 season. If that remains a hard line for ownership, we don't know that. If it does, you have to build out 7 more players on the roster, including Dyson, for about $118 million or less. If that is a hard line. Again, if. Now, I wish we had this, but we don't. I want to get you a podcast as fast as possible. It takes some time, maybe even a few hours and days to get the actual specifics on the Dyson contract. So keep that in mind. This is not gospel. It could be. Last year, Jalen Johnson's deal was 5 years. It was flat. That's not the usual structure. That happens sometimes. The most common structure, though, would be to start as low as possible and have it go up as high as possible by the end, because that way you're kind of in line with the salary cap jumping. So the most common projection would be that, and I'm going to use that for now. But keep in mind, it could be flat. We just don't know at this point in time. If it is starting him as low as possible, it'd be $22.3 million in the 26-27 season. Then it'd be $24.1 million in the following year, which is 27-28. Then $25.9 million in year 3, which is 28-29. And then it ends at $27.7 million in the 29-30 season. Again, a projection, not gospel at this point in time. If that holds, Dyson will be between 13.4% and 14.4% of the projected salary cap moving forward. So that's a nerdy thing. I get it. But again, what I said earlier is that basically pays him like a fifth starter kind of player, which obviously he's proven to be better than that already. Now, if you throw in that $22.3 million to the $83-ish million that you already have committed for next year, you're at about $105 million for 8 players with no Trey, no Porzingis, no Kennard. That means you have 96 million or so for Trey, Porzingis, etc. if you want to stay under the tax line. If Trey makes 50 million-ish, which is a reasonable projection, you can still get Porzingis a real contract, fill out with minimums, and maybe be under the tax. That's one of the bright spots of not paying Dyson a ton here, is that you can maybe do that for another year or two until someone like Ricochet jumps up into making more than he's making now, for example, when you have to extend him or whatever. Again, this is all rough math because we don't know the structure, but it's not the reason why you lock in Dyson into this deal. But Dyson's cap hold would have been $23 million anyway. So there was no savings potentially there. The Hawks are going to be over the cap anyway. And all of this folds in on itself. That's something I want to stress to you. Every dollar that you pay Dyson is a dollar you have to worry about somewhere else. Like it kind of goes all in, and all the optionality, all the flexibility, all of the unknowns, to be fair, about Trey and Porzingis. Now you have one more set of knowns with Dyson. More long-term, quickly here, a lot of this will ebb and flow with Trey in particular, but also Porzingis. But they now do have Jalen and Dyson locked up both through the 2030 season at an average of $55 million a year for 2 guys that could be top 50 players or better. Jalen's already been there, I think, on a per-game basis. Dyson was at that level at times last year as well. That's really, really good value on 2 guys who are versatile, two-way players. To be locked in at that really, really modest amount is great GM work, I think, honestly. Then you have Ricochet and team control on him. Obviously, he's only cheap for 2 more years after this, but if he gets an extension, regardless, they have team control on him through probably 2032, 2033. That's a very exciting trio to be building around. All 3 guys between 6'7" and 6'9", rangy, athletic, two-way wing kind of players, wing style players. Then you have Nickeil Alexander-Walker on a good deal. You have a Conlon on a good deal. You have the Pelicans pick, all of that. And then, of course, you throw in Trey, Porzingis, and everything else that you're building around. So I don't want to overstate the case about this. Like, there's still always risk. If you give a deal out in the long term, there's always risk. But at this number, it impacts the future in a positive way. It lets Auntie plan for the future. Now you know a little bit more information than you knew before about like what you're going to be able to physically pay Trey or physically pay Porzingis without having to navigate the aprons and all of that stuff. But a lot of that is also just like locking up your core long term and keeping the vibes. Like, I'm not always a huge vibes guy, but it does matter. Like, keeping the good vibes going right now, Dyson getting paid, the team getting a good contract that they can kind of lock in information for future planning. And like, it's a good day for the Hawks. You know, the other big deadline that happened today was locking in the roster. No surprises, by the way. It's the same 14 guys we talked about yesterday. The Hawks will go into the season with an open roster spot. If you missed it, I did a full breakdown of the weekend's moves on yesterday's episode, but it's the 14 guys that we've talked about already. The Hawks are now, at least for opening day, locked in. They have an open roster spot, good vibes. And look, I would have come on this podcast as my final statement. I would have come on the podcast. If they hadn't done a deal today, I would have told you, and I would have believed it, that it wasn't a sky is falling situation. It would have been fine. I still would have firmly believed that the Hawks and Dyson were not at odds. Like, the Hawks have always liked Dyson. If they didn't find a deal, it would have been because the two sides were just a little bit too far apart. And that does happen. But if you can avoid even the conversation about having to worry about the future and all that stuff, Dyson's now locked in. He could just focus on the season. The vibes are better. Even if I would have been like, hey, guys, don't worry. And I would have meant it 100% if they hadn't found a deal for Dyson today before the deadline at 6 p.m. So it is what it is. But a busy day, a good day for the Hawks, good day for Dyson, who's a lot richer than he was yesterday. That's always a cool thing for guys. Even if these guys are all rich, I get it. But like, it's still, he's earned it. He was fantastic last season. And I think the Hawks are in for a bright future with Dyson as part of the mix in Atlanta. All right, everybody. That's all I have on a pseudo emergency podcast on a Monday evening. I was planning to do a show either way because obviously this is a deadline that we knew was going to have some impact on the Hawks. But in case you were wondering, the Hawks play a basketball game in about 48 hours as I'm recording this podcast on Monday early evening. I will have at least one, if not two episodes between now and the game. So please stay tuned for that. Please subscribe to the podcast anywhere you find podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Follow the show on X/Twitter at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there at BT Rowland. Follow me on Blue Sky at BT Rowland. I'm also on my non-podcast work about the Hawks is at patreon.com/BT Rowland. All right, everybody, stay tuned. A game happening on Wednesday. The season is here. A lot to talk about. We'll be here all the way through the season, and we'll see you all next time.